Thank you for joining the program this morning. We are coming to you live from our studios in Kukumlimle at digital address GA0992539, live on your DSTV channel 421, Go TV channel 144 on your digital TV, and around the world at myjoyonline.com. To the details now. The Electoral Commission boss Jin Mensah and National Security Minister Albert Kandapa are expected in Parliament today to answer questions on ensuring a violence-free and fair election. Officials of the National Commission on Civic Education, NCCE, and National Media Commission are also expected in the House. Parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku-Gakpo joins us with more. Hello, Joseph. The Majority Leader, Oseche Mensah Bonsu, briefed the House yesterday on what to expect during today's visit or appearance by these people. Tell us more.
The entire conversation would happen in two forms. First of all, the House will be sitting at the level of plenary and conducting public business, during which the Minister for National Security will be responding to questions before members of Parliament. So that will be happening in the full glow of the public. Usually that happens every morning, almost every morning before sitting begins, when various ministers come to respond to questions on the floor of the House. After the National Security Minister is done, per the provisions in the standing orders of Parliament, someone who is not a Minister of State cannot address Parliament at the level of plenary. So the Electoral Commission boss cannot do that, the NCC boss cannot do that, the NMC boss cannot do that, the Inspector General of Police cannot do that. So what's likely to happen is that after the National Security Minister appears at the plenary to respond to questions and MPs follow up with various questions, then the House will convene, not at the level of a plenary, but as a committee of the whole. Other people who are not ministers can only show up in Parliament and appear before committees. So the General House will reconstitute as a committee of the whole to allow for Mr. Yao Aibuaf, as well as Josephine Nkrumah, the National Commission for Civic Education boss, and also most likely the Inspector General of Police to also then respond to subsequent questions. One additional demand that the Minority Leader, whose initial request actually resulted in what we will be seeing today, is that the IG, the Inspector General of Police, as well as the Minister for Interior participate in the conversation, apart from the National Security Minister. So when the House reconstitutes as a committee, then it gives the space, apart from the National Security Minister himself, Albert Kandapa, for all the other security officials to then go ahead and give the necessary additional information beyond what the National Security Minister will be telling the members of Parliament.
Joseph, do we expect that these individuals will brief the MPs separately, or they're doing it together?
From what we gather, they will do it separately. It will all begin with the National Security Minister, Albert Kandapa, and then there will be questions from MPs as a follow-up for him to respond to. And then, most likely, we gather the Electoral Commission will then be brought in to deliver more like a general address, and then after that, the two other officials will also speak to MPs, and after it's when each of them are done with specific presentations that the MPs will then ask questions to them generally. So we gather that the format will be the security.
Hello, Joseph. It appears
the aspect being dealt with separately from.
Sorry, we lost you there a bit. Please go on.
So it will be a conversation that would see the security issues being dealt with separately from all the other issues having to do with plans for the voting centers and all. One of the key things that we gather that the minority MPs in particular will be making a very big issue of in this conversation is the issue having to do with the biometric verification devices. The Minority Leader has hinted that he has concerns that during the exhibition exercise, despite the assurance from the Electoral Commission that they had procured enough to cover all constituencies, those devices did not go out on the day that the exhibition was being done. So they have questions about whether on election day there will be enough of those devices out there in order to allow for the necessary biometric verification verification on election day. So it's likely to be a long morning. Rather that the sitting itself will begin around 11 o'clock, and it's likely to eat into a little later in the day before the House will be done with that.
All right, that's my colleague Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, parliamentary correspondent, briefing us on what is going to happen today. It's going to be quite a busy day, and you know here, as your election headquarters and most credible news source, will bring you all you need to know about the appearance of the EC boss John Mensah, NCC boss, NMC boss, and the National Security Minister. We're just learning that the IGP will also appear to brief the MPs on preparedness for the December 7 elections. Well, Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu, whose request last week led to the invitation, is making some fresh demands. He wants the police to give MPs the list of security personnel being deployed to various constituencies.
Electoral Commission tomorrow, but it appears that the Majority Leader has added others. I heard him mention Media Commission and NCC. Our request was specific to the Electoral Commission to give us a briefing on their preparedness for the presidential and parliamentary elections, because we need to ascertain the BVDs that we so procured for them. We've moved beyond registration. Now we need to understand verification. They procured 75,000. What is the state of it? In order that we understand that on election day we are not going to go manual and that those equipments are in play. But if it's invited NMC and NCC, all the better. In respect of the security agencies, we want the Minister for Interior to support the Minister for National Security. And this time the IGP must be in attendance, because we want to understand what the deployment of the police service will be across the country to every constituency and to every polling station. We need to know who goes where. So appreciate it. We look forward to tomorrow when they come to give us their brief. And I'm sure the whips, this is a matter which affects all of us. So as you've heard, Leader, you should get members to show commitment and interest in those matters for the future good of our country. Thank you.
That's Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu speaking on the floor on Wednesday. Well, before the Inspector General of Police, James Opon-Buenu, briefs the House today, he says the security strategy will be revised slightly in dealing with hotspots after identifying more than 6,000 flashpoints ahead of next month's elections. The new figures are over 1,000 more than what was identified in 2016. Addressing a news conference on the readiness of Election Security Task Force ahead of the polls on Wednesday, the IGP said lapses identified during his recent working visit in the regions are being tackled. Head of our security desk, Gifty Andwapia, has more in the following report.
Flanked by the top hierarchy of police, the IGP also had company from men in military uniform. Symbolic, they will be working together on December 7. On election day, expect to see more than 62,000 security officers at post. This time with armlets for easy identification and prevention of infiltration.
For identification purposes, a special armlet will be worn by officers deployed for election duties on election day. 62,794 security personnel from the Ghana Police Service, the Ghana Fire Service, the Ghana Prison Service, the Ghana Immigration Service, the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority, and the Ghana Armed Forces are being deployed for the elections. All the personnel that I've mentioned will be in their regular uniforms, with the exception of officers from the Criminal Investigation Department and of the Police Service and the Bureau of National Investigations, who will remain invisible in court.
And they will not be alone.
Ladies and gentlemen, personnel of the Ghana Armed Forces, together with operational units of the Ghana Police Service, who will be fully armed, will execute the patrol and rapid response and standby duties.
The police will also keep an eye on usual duties to deal with the threats of crime, terrorism or vigilantism that may spring up. The Odododiodo constituency, an electoral hotspot, has recorded a bloody clash between opposition NDC and the governing NPP recently. Well, the Ghana Police has identified more than 6,000 of such flashpoints, and the strategies to be employed in these areas will be reviewed accordingly.
Saturated patrols and standby forces may be visible to prevent any mishap. We have identified 6,178 flashpoints nationwide. The flashpoints were decided based on a number of factors, such as incidents recorded in previous elections, this year's voters' registration exercise, and crime rates and other factors.
Is the police service, mostly criticized as unfair and lacking public confidence, ready for this huge task?
I have visited all the 16 regions of this country. I also interacted with officers of all ranks on a variety of subjects, including how they are psychologically prepared for the task. And I'm satisfied that we are ready.
There are still some grey areas requiring attention.
The few gaps witnessed from the visits have been filled. However, a few remain which we are yet to fill before election day, and I can assure you that that will be done.
He would not give details. The police office, however, is working with the Electoral Commission to make the exercise as smooth and peaceful as possible. Officers on electoral duties will also not allow motorbikes more than 100 meters from polling stations. The IGP explains.
Most of the time, people who want to snap ballot boxes use motorbikes. First of all, 100 meters from a polling station, you don't bring a motorbike there. Because if you come there, we'll prevent you from coming closer.
Already, security analysts have said 100 meters is enough for a disruptive gunshot, and they're calling for a review of same. Going forward, the police service says communication channels will be opened to allow people who witness electoral violence or malpractices to report. But questions have been raised over police response time, even in emergencies.
I can assure you that in some cases, there will be less than 50 minutes.
Security analysts again have argued that 1.2 million Ghanaians possess arms, as those seeking gun licenses saw.
We are working with the Small Arms Commission. This morning, I sent an officer to the Western region, where the Small Arms Commission is undertaking an exercise. So we are in touch with them to try to deal with the small arms, the light arms situation in our country.
In June this year, MP for Wutusenya East, Howard Kumsin, who doubles as a Minister of State, admitted to firing gunshots during an altercation at a registration centre in Kasua. Many Ghanaians are expecting an update.
You were talking about a certain MP and claiming to have fired. You know, investigation is not a one-day event. It is not just that the event has happened. You arrest the person, put him before court, and the court discharges him. I think Ghanaians deserve better. And they deserve better by waiting on the police to do thorough investigations before we put cases before court.
Ayawaso West Wugon remains fresh on the minds of Ghanaians when masked armed men stormed a by-election. The result? Chaos and sporadic gunshots. The IGP says there will be zero tolerance for people who are not part of the original security plan.
On that day, I can assure you that the rapid response team that we have will deal with any situation arising out of people who are not prepared or who are not supposed to be there. Anybody who is not within our setup and he appears will be dealt with by our rapid response teams.
So be reminded as you go to the polls on December 7 to look out for this distinctive armbands that security personnel or anybody who puts himself forward as a security personnel will be bearing. From the number of people to be deployed on election day to the food for security personnel, everything has been addressed here by the Inspector General of Police. And this is a gesture that many Ghanaians have been waiting for in the wake of what has been described as heightened insecurity. Whether or not the answers given here thoroughly addresses all the thorny electoral issues, including violence, we all wait to see on December 7 and perhaps beyond. Gifty Andopia, Joy News, Police Headquarters, Accra.
Thanks for staying here on News Desk. Now, the NPP's 510 promises were given a final scorecard of 56.77% by the manifesto assessor. In 2016, the NDC's 540 promises were given a final scorecard of 53% by the manifesto assessor. Now, both parties, according to the manifesto scale, have performed satisfactorily fair. Now, let me give you some more details on this recent assessment of the MPP's promises. When you come to the economy, they have 57.62%. Overall, a total of 162 promises were made under the economy sector, 85 under general economy, trade and industry, 54 under agriculture, 21 under tourism. A total of 41, which represents 25.3% of those promises, have been fully implemented. 101, that's 62.3%, have been partially implemented, and 12.3% not initiated. So here are some of the fulfilled promises in the economy sector. And the first one is that the 1% special import levy will be abolished. Abolish the 17.5% VAT NHIL on selected imported medicines that are not produced locally. Abolish 17.5% VAT NHIL on financial services. Pass the fiscal responsibility law. The Fiscal Council has been established. Financial sector cleanup exercise has been carried out, and further actions continue to date. The ones that are partially fulfilled and others that are yet to be achieve double-digit GDP growth annually for the next 4 years. This has not been achieved. Minimize political patronage of state-sponsored microfinance institutions and facilitate the passage of a consumer protection law. Now, this has not been done. And reduce corporate tax rate from 25 to 20%. This is yet to be done. So then you have some more figures on the economy. When it comes to macroeconomic stability, you've got 77% of that. Economic management from taxation to production, 62%. It goes on and on and on. You can get more details of this manifesto tracker on the website of Imani Africa. Now, let me just give you this before I go on the partially fulfilled promises when it comes to the tourism, culture and creative arts sector. Resource and reactivate Ghana museums and monuments. These have been done. Well, fulfilled/unfulfilled. Review and actively implement the culture policy. Construct modern theaters in all the 10 regions. We are yet to see that. Set up copyright office in Takrade, Tamale and Kumasi, and actively promote the conservation of forest to support ecotourism. Well, this goes on and on and on, but we've been receiving some reaction to this from government and the opposition party NDC. And we had some guests on PM Express Manifesto Tracker program Wednesday night.
Evans, our attitude is not to get complacent with these complimentary ratings. This is not the first time. Just a fortnight ago, a couple of days actually ago, the CDD Ghana, in a similar research, in fact, their methodology was different. They went out to the people of Ghana and interviewed the respondents, and it was clear that the MPP had a 15 percentage point advantage over the NDC as far as the citizens' confidence, public confidence in either party's capacity to deliver on their campaign promises is concerned. 15 clear percentage points over and above the NDC. Again, the Imani Africa's work, with all the limitations that it contains, and I'll come to that in a bit, also suggests strongly that as far as the NPP's track record of implementing campaign promises are concerned, we are performing and doing far better than the NDC did within the same 4 years under review. Far better.
Just 3 percentage points different.
No, 3 percentage point difference in nominal terms is monumental. And the methodology that Imani uses, they will score maybe the passage of a legislation as 1, which is the higher score.
Yes.
Okay, and then they will pass the free SHS also as one. But I'm saying that we have done the analysis, and it is to a certain extent validated by what the Imani has done, even within the limitations that it suffers. But even that one suggests that we in the MPP, we have more credibility before the people of Ghana, before Imani, before your good selves, all the viewers, that when we say that we will do this, the probability that we will in fact do it is far higher than that of the NDC.
My initial reaction, that if I were NPP, I would be very worried, because this is virtually an indictment on their performance. Typically, these global percentages mask out the essential points and essential policies that they've implemented. For instance, take the economy. Very, very huge score for macroeconomic stability. But how do we get the macroeconomic stability? We are debt distressed. They borrowed a huge amount of money. And indeed, the cost of living index says something completely different. So if what you do is to do the voodoo economics and borrow it to show up your currency, you haven't achieved that much. You can say that you said you're going to provide or to stabilize the economy. But the way you do it is an issue. And indeed, if you go out into the streets and you ask people, and perhaps I should also say that this particular piece of work is based on reports, as they themselves said it, government reports, self-serving government reports. The public budget, as we know, MPP is notorious for hiding real statistical data that would change the outlook of the economy, and the IMF exposed them. So again, they talked about annual progress reports written by the National Development Planning Commission. I've been part of that process. The governance indicators are showing that 49%.
Let's stay a while on scorecards, surveys, and all that, because Ghanaians have ranked the NPP administration's performance as higher than the former NDC's, and this is contained in the latest survey conducted by the National Commission on Civic Education, NCCE. Now, the survey sought the views of 9,541 Ghanaians across the 16 regions, and that the research found that education, health, and employment are topmost matters of concern on the minds of Ghanaians or voters ahead of the December 7 polls. Now, on their performance in these areas, Ghanaians scored the NPP 60.2%, whilst the NDC garnered some 50.6%. Analyzing the report with Daniel Dazi on Prime Morning on Joy Prime TV, Director of Research at the NCCE, Dr. Henrietta Asante Sapong, revealed reasons the respondents gave for their ranking. First is on education.
Education, with the scale that we use, we had the NDC having an average score of 2.75, with the NPP having an average score of 3.31. On health, we had the NDC scoring 2.69 from our respondents, and then NPP scoring 2.82. The margin is very, very slim. And then on employment, our respondents scored the NDC 2.17 averagely, and then 2.92 averagely for the NPP. We went further to also explore the reasons given for higher. This is average. So of course we had a proportion scoring each government a higher score, a higher rate, and then some scoring lower rates. So for the MPP on high score when it comes to education, they were praised by the people for implementation of the free SHS policy. It's a positive one, and so it received higher scores. Higher score, that is scores between 4 and 5. And then on the lower side, the issue that came up as the main reason, lower is between 1 and 2. The poor implementation of the free SHS policy came as the #1 reason, and then the general decline in quality of education due to the double track system. We didn't go further to ask our respondents to explain what they mean by quality. But the ordinary person feels that the double-track system has the potential of making our education not one that is of a high quality. For the NDC on education and receiving high scores, the reason was that there was addition of significant number of educational infrastructure during their tenure. And scoring the NDC lower, the reasons were the fact that there was high cost of education during their tenure, then lack of policy to deal with challenges within the sector. That's for education.
Well, on health, Dr. Henrietta Asante-Sapong indicated that Ghanaians praised the MPP government's efforts in managing COVID-19.
Can I go ahead and mention a little for health?
Healthcare, yeah.
For health, MPP received higher scores with these reasons, that there has been effective management of the NHIS, and then effective management of the COVID-19 pandemic also came up as a very topmost reason why they scored higher. Then on the low side, the inability of the administration to address healthcare needs of some sections of the population generally, and then the seemingly lack of infrastructure in particularly rural areas within the country came up. For the NDC, the construction of a number of health facilities gave them a very high score from our respondents, and then a cross-section also felt that the NHIS was even more effective during the tenure of the NDC. Those who scored lower for the NDC, that section of the respondents who scored lower also indicated otherwise for the NHIS. They felt that the NHIS was not better. So there's some level of contradiction, but the population or the respondent population was different.
And that was some details there on the National Commission of Civic Education's recent survey. Away from that, electronics and programming are everywhere in communication, transportation, health, energy security, agric, among others. One of the things developed countries share in common is their strong foundation in science and technology. Though Africa is trying to reach that height, many factors, including lack of equipment, continue to make it difficult. Luckily, a device called Mabel, produced by tech startup firm Ericatronics, is making sure Ghanaians ace these fields. On Tech Thursday, Lava Film's Chrissy Deborah speaks with the brainchild of this device, Eric Obeng.
Final year agriculture engineering student of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Kojo Usu, has a dream.
Ever since I stepped foot in engineering, in the College of Engineering here in KNUST, I've had this passion to learn computer programming.
Though the 19-year-old has been juggling with various computer programming applications for some time now, the experience has not been enthralling.
I just don't find it interesting enough for me. It becomes boring after like the first 2 hours of programming. I don't know what I'm doing or what I'm going to use it for, which makes it very blind for me because I don't know what I'm using it for or even where I'm going with it. But then I know it's something I have to learn because looking at the job market out there, computer programmers are really needed out there. So I want to learn it, but then learning it is just not doing it for me.
The fourth industrial revolution has called for acquisition of digital skills to thrive. The constant interaction with our phones and computers has made knowledge in IT and electronics a necessity. However, Kojo's struggles is reminiscent of the continent's constraints in equipment and trained teachers. Eric Obeng has actively been teaching programming and electronics for 7 years now.
One of the things I love doing is teaching. I taught in a junior high school for 5 years before coming to the university. In the university, I got a chance of teaching my friends how to write computer programs, and I've been doing that till now.